All right, as we get started today, we are going to review over those conversion units that we need to have memorized. So what we're going to do for starters, we're just going to say these together as a class. We're going to read the whole thing, but we're going to fill in the blanks. So we'll start with an easy one, class. 1 foot equals 12 inches. 1 yard equals 3 feet. 1 yard equals 36 inches. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. Let's do that one again. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. Let's do that one again as well. That's a hard number to remember. 1 mile equals 1,760 yards. 1 pound equals 16 ounces. 1 ton equals 2,000 pounds. 1 pint equals 2 cups. 1 quart equals 2 pints. This is always a fun one, right? The P and the Q. I don't know, have you ever heard the phrase mind your P's and Q's? No. Older generation said it more so than our newer generation coming up. But the difference between the P and the Q is which side of the ball is the stick on, right? And so the Q and the P. So a quart is 2 pints, a pint is 2 cups. But 1 gallon equals 4 quarts. 1 tablespoon equals 3 teaspoons. This is the new one for most of us. 1 fluid ounce equals 2 tablespoons. 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. Let's say that one again. 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. 1 pint equals 16 fluid ounces. Remember, a pint's a pound of the world around. If you remember that a pound is 16 ounces, you'll remember that a pint of water would be 16 ounces as well, or a pound. We call it 16 fluid ounces. One more time. 1 pint equals 16 fluid ounces. So some dry measures here. 1 peck equals 8 quarts. 1 bushel equals 4 pecks. All right, so one more time. A peck, class, is 8 quarts, but a bushel is 4 pecks. All right, let's go through these now. Shuffle them up just a little bit. And I think we'll do row on row competition here. So let's start with our first row. We'll maybe do some around the world in later days, but for now, what's the problem, Benjamin?
Why do they have an LB for pound?
That's a great question. I don't know. All right, so wubs and auses, right? 1 wub equals 16 auses, right? All right, so anyway. All right, row 1, here we go. Call it out. The rest of you just watching. 8 quarts in the peck. Very good. All right, row 2.
3.
4 pecks in the bushel. 4 pecks in the bushel. Row 3.
2.
2. Good, Michael. 2 cups in the pint.
4.
2. We got 2 pints in the quart.
12.
36.
36. Remember, there's 12 inches to the foot and 3 feet to the yard, so 36 inches in the yard. All right. Row 3.
5,280.
5,280. Michael again. All right, coming over here. 16 fluid ounces in the pint.
6. No, it's not. No.
All right, remember, it takes 2 cups to make a pint. So if a pint is 16, the cup is going to be half as big. Cup that is only, class, 8 fluid ounces, right? Okay, so this row, say this with me. 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. All right, let's go to row 3. 3 teaspoons in the tablespoon. Here we go. 12 inches in the foot.
16.
16 pounds in the ounce.
1,760.
I think Elaine got you that time. Like, you made it close. That was you could do the you know, at the end of like prescription drug commercials, they have the guy who comes on and really talk fast and talks about how drug may cause death, you know, dismemberment, loss of sight, loss of vision, massive rash, allergic reaction, you know, all that. But they have to say it really fast so you don't pay attention to it. Yeah. All right, anyway. Actually, I think they just record it and play it really, really fast. But, you know. Anyway, it's fun to pretend you could do that part naturally. Anyway, here we go. Row 1.
2,000.
2,000 pounds in the ton.
That's funny. Oh, snap. 2, 4, no.
4.
It is 4. You said no, though. You took it back. All right, so 4 quarts to the gallon.
Oh.
2.
2. Good, Ben. 2 tablespoons make up a fluid ounce.
3.
3. Bryson. Again.
4. No.
2.
I don't 3.
It is 8, Sam. All right, say this middle row with me. 1 peck equals 8 quarts. And the last one for the whole class.
4.
4. Say it with me, class. 1 bushel equals 4 pecks. All right, page 220 in your textbooks. Page 220 in your textbooks. You did the homework section, numbers 1 through 14. So flip those books open. Good. 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 Play with the hot cocoa stains. Good. You were not here, but you did it anyway, right? Yes, you did good. And good. Let's take a look at these together. As we convert units, obviously the first step, you got to have those units memorized. That's what we were just drilling. But then from there, when you're converting, you've got to think about what did they give me? And what do they want me to convert to? Class, if you go from smaller to larger, divide. If you go from larger to smaller, multiply. Again, larger to smaller,
Divide. Oh, wait.
larger to smaller, multiply. But larger to smaller,
Divide.
no, multiply. Larger to smaller, multiply, class. Smaller to larger, divide. All right, so looking at number 1, are we going from larger to smaller to larger, Elaine? We're going from larger yards to smaller feet, so we should multiply by how many feet in a yard? 3. So we get 24 feet for our answer. Number 2, are we going from larger to smaller to larger? Griffin.
Smaller to larger to small.
Larger to smaller, so we multiply by how many yards in a mile?
1,760.
1,760 to get what answer?
3,520.
Good. 3,520 yards is correct for number 3. We're going from larger to smaller to larger. Jalen.
Smaller to larger.
Smaller to larger, so we
Divide.
by how many ounces in a pound?
60.
To get
2.
2 pounds for our answer. Number 4. We're going from larger to smaller to larger, Luciana.
Larger to smaller.
Larger to smaller, so we
Multiply.
multiply by how many pounds at a ton?
2,000.
2,000. What is a fourth times or a fourth of 2,000?
500.
500 pounds is correct. Number 5. We're going from larger to smaller to larger, Sam.
Larger, smaller.
Larger feet to smaller inches, we,
Get 144.
well, do we multiply or divide?
You
Larger to smaller,
multiply.
multiply. And we multiply it by how many inches in a foot?
12.
12, so we get
144.
144 inches. Wait for me to ask for the answer. Please kind of follow along with me. This is the way we are reviewing today. Number 6, we go from larger to smaller to larger. Michael.
Larger to smaller.
Larger to smaller, so we
Multiply.
multiply by how many ounces in a pound?
6.
Class, how many ounces in a pound?
16.
16. 1 pound equals 16 ounces. So we should have multiplied by 16 to get what answer, Michael? Now, Ben, what did you get for number 6?
64.
Oh, dear. Kirsten?
Number 6.
Number 6.
Okay, 320.
320 ounces should have been our answer. We multiply by 16. Let's go back to Michael for redemption. Michael, larger to smaller to larger on number 7.
Larger to smaller.
Larger to smaller, we
Multiply.
multiply by how many feet in a mile?
5,280.
And this actually isn't too bad multiplication. We just get
52,800.
52,800. Let's go back to Ben now for number 8. We go from larger to smaller to larger.
Smaller to larger.
Smaller to larger, we
Divide.
divide by how many inches in a yard?
36.
36. And we divide 252 by 36, we get?
15.
Not 15. Corey? Number 8?
7.
7 yards should have been our answer when we divide by 36. Number 9, 6,000 or 600 ounces equals how many pounds? We going from larger to smaller or smaller to larger, Bryson?
Smaller to larger.
Smaller to larger, so we
Divide.
divide by how many ounces in a pound?
16.
16. And what is 600 divided by 16?
37.5.
37.5 pounds. Outstanding job. Number 10. Let's go back to Ben for redemption. We're going from larger to smaller or smaller to larger.
Smaller to larger.
So we
divide
By how many yards in a mile?
1,760.
1,760. When we divide by 1,760, we get
Five.
5 miles is correct. Was anyone perfect on 1 through 10? You got them all correct. Several of you. Good. Any questions on 1 through 10? Number 11, go and read that for us if you would, Sam.
From Minnesota, Mr. Brown and his wife traveled down the Mississippi River on a riverboat. They stopped on Vicksburg, which is 242 miles upriver from New Orleans. How many more yards did they have to travel downriver to reach New Orleans?
All right, so you're introduced to a couple of terms, downriver, upriver. Okay, so as the river flows, basically they got how close to Nolens, as some people say in the South. How close did they get, Sam? Nolens. Running together. Anyway, how close did they get to New Orleans, Sam? It says in the problem they got
242 miles upriver.
242 miles away. The 242 miles upriver just means they got 242 miles away from it when they stopped at Vicksburg. Okay, New Orleans is at the end of the Mississippi River, all the way south in Louisiana, right there on the Gulf of Mexico. And so the question is, though, if they're 242 miles from New Orleans, how many more yards do they still have to travel?
1 million. It is in the millions.
It's not quite in the millions. How many yards are in a mile?
1,760.
So we should have just multiplied by 1,760. And it's going to be a big number, but it's not going to be the millions, Bryson.
425,920.
425,920 yards is correct. How many had that big old number for number 11? Several of you did. Number 12, read that for us if you would, Ben.
A paper bag held 5 pounds of bananas. How many ounces did bananas weigh?
All right, so they give us pounds and they want us to find ounces. So are we going from larger to smaller or smaller to larger, Ben?
Larger to smaller.
Larger to smaller, we?
Multiple.
How many ounces in a pound? I should ask Michael this. Michael, how many ounces in a pound?
16.
16. So we multiply by 16 back to Ben. What do we get for our answer on 12?
40.
Ooh. Michael for redemption?
80.
80. Should have been 80 ounces for number 12. We multiply 16 times 5. Number 13. What are we finding? What do we call the number that we are looking for, Jalen? The base. And to find the base, class, we have to divide the part by the percent. And when you divide 22 by 25%, class, what is 25% as a decimal?
0.25.
But what is it as a fraction?
1/4.
And wouldn't it be easier to multiply by the reciprocal and simply get, class, 88 rather than dividing by 0.25? You could divide by 0.25, still get 88. How many had 88 for number 13? Number 14, once again, finding the base. And how do I set up my fraction on number 14? Sam?
36 over 30.
Well, over 30%, but I have to write it as
0.3.
0.3. But can I really divide by a decimal? So what do I got to do?
1 point.
Boink. And if I boink here, I also got a boink here, makes it 360 divided by 3. When we divide, 3 goes into 3. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 6,
2.
and 3 goes into 0. There's our answer, 120. How many had 120 for number 14? Questions on those? Questions on those? Anyone perfect on the entire homework assignment? Wow, a few of you were. Good. Questions? Flip back, if you would, page 219. Page 219. I want you to do 49 to 54 at the bottom. 49 to 54 at the bottom of page 219. Take just a few minutes to work these problems. We don't need to be making noises. Just working quietly on numbers 49 to 54. study finished. If you remember, you were here at the start of the lesson yesterday. I said we're skipping chapters 3, 4, and 5 for now. Take just another minute or so to work on these. Some of us having to flip back and look up some measures. That's okay. Right now you can. That's a good way to help you memorize them as needed. We will need them to be memorized very soon. Let's take a look at these together. Number 49, 36 feet equals how many yards, Griffin? 12 yards. Divide by 3, going from smaller to larger. Number 50, 10 tons. How many pounds, Kirsten?
160.
I think you treated it like 10 pounds is how many ounces. Tons and pounds. How many pounds in a ton, class?
2,000.
2,000. We are going from massive tons to much smaller pounds. So we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply by 2,000 to get, Corey, 20,000 pounds. Let's go back to Kirsten for redemption. 8 yards. How many inches?
208.
Because we're going. Say that again.
208.
Really close, but no. Bryson?
294.
Who? Also no, but you're closer. Luciana, sorry. 288. 288. We're going from larger yards to smaller inches. We're going to multiply, but we're going to multiply by 36. Just be careful on your multiplication. 288 inches. Number 52, what is 45% written as a decimal? Kirsten, third tries the charm.
0.45.
0.45. What is 1/8% written as a decimal, Ben?
0.00125.
Excellent. And that's 0.00125. Number 54, what's the LCD of 5/8 and 5/12? If you were adding these, what would that common denominator need to be? Elaine?
24.
Need a 24 for your common denominator. Questions on that classwork assignment? Any questions on that? And we got all the ones you did right. No questions at all. All right. Flip back, if you would, in your textbooks to page 216 very briefly. Look on page 216, 217. Some interesting measures here. Obviously, when you read your Bible, they don't use terms like pecks and quarts and gallons. They use ephahs and omers. They do use bushels. They use things like talents and shekels and for money and the cubits and spans and hands and things like that for their measurement. And so some interesting little write-ups here on length in the Bible, weight and money in the Bible. So I'd encourage you to read over those. Those will not be tested, so you don't have to know that. But I think it'd be really good for you to keep this in mind as you're reading. Maybe even as you're reading through your Bible and you see some different things, you're like, wait, what is that? For instance, Goliath, remember, was listed as being 6 cubits and a span. How many remember seeing that when you're reading about Goliath? Well, a cubit was the distance from the man's elbow to the tip of the man's finger. Typically, that's about 18 inches. It could be as long as, for some people, 22. Most people, it's about 18. I think mine's a little longer than that. But that's a cubit, right? It's a full-grown man, typical full-grown man's elbow to fingertip. If we assume 18 inches, 6 cubits times 18 inches. 108 inches. Now let's put that in terms of feet. Divide that by 12, class. How many feet is that? 9 feet. And it said a span. A span is the distance from a typical grown man's thumb to pinky finger. That's a span. Okay, typical man, that's about 9 inches. I've got about 10-inch span, but 9 inches is kind of considered the normal. And so if we add another 9 inches to that, if we're going off those, it'd be about 9 feet 9 inches. Could be a little bit bigger depending on the way the cubit's defined. We get the idea of a guy whose head would definitely go through the ceiling. Maybe downstairs. How many have seen the K4 classroom, K5 classroom downstairs? Have you noticed their ceilings are higher? And so, or maybe the downstairs hallway, when you first walk in, you go down the stairs and the ceiling stays the same height. That's about 10 feet, so Goliath's head would be hitting the ceiling. It's going to give you a little bit of a visual there. But some interesting things there on length, weight, money in the Bible. I encourage you to read over those. I want to move now, though, to the next thing at the bottom of page 216. What if, instead of converting, for instance, yards to inches, or what if you wanted to go, for instance, miles to inches? Do we have a memorized fact that says 1 inch equals this, or 1 mile equals this many inches, class? No, we don't want to, let's be fair, right? So what if I saw something that said 2 miles equals blank inches? Well, you don't convert straight from miles to inches, class. You convert from miles to something in between. What would be in between miles and inches, class? Feet would be a great one. Or even if we wanted to, yards. Either one of them. Let's go to Jalen. Which one do you want to use, feet or yards? She's like, which one do I remember?
No.
How many feet in a mile?
7,280.
She's actually close. It's not 7,280, class. It's 5,280. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by 5,280. And class, do this with me very quickly. 2 times nothing.
0.
2 times 8.
16.
2 times 2 plus 1.
5.
And 2 times 5.
10.
So that gives us 10,560 feet. But we're not finished because we still need to go, class, to inches. Well, how many inches in the foot, class? 12. So now we multiply that by 12. And let's start by multiplying the 2, class. 2 times nothing.
0.
2 times 6.
12.
2 times 5 plus 1.
11.
2 times 9 plus 1.
1.
2 times 1. There, 2. 2. What is it? 2 times 1 is 2. We have a gap. And of course, 1 times all this is just going to be all that, right? So 0, 6, 5, 0, 1. Add those together. And let's see. I got 1, 2, 6, 7, 2, 0. Apparently, if you were to take just inches, it'd take 126,720 inches to make 2 miles. Notice it required more than 1 step, right? In this particular instance. What about this one? What if we said I've got 80 pints? Maybe we have, for instance, milk sometimes comes in a pint-sized bottle. And suppose we had 80 pint-sized bottles of milk. We're like, I wonder how many gallons that is. Well, let's convert pints to gallons. Do we know how many pints are in a gallon, class? No, but I don't know that number. We didn't memorize it. But I do know how many pints are in a I know how many cups are in a pint, but I know how many pints are in a quart, right? That would be the next biggest one, right? How many pints does it take to make a quart, class?
2.
2 pints to make a single quart. So we're going from smaller to larger. This time we're going to have to divide by 2 to get how many quarts? 40 quarts. How many quarts in a gallon? 4 quarts in the gallon. So again, we're going from smaller quarts to large gallons. We're going to have to divide by 4, class, to get how many gallons?
10.
10. Do you see that some conversions are not 1 step, but rather 2, or maybe in a really unfortunate instance, 3. Okay? But multi-step conversions. Does that make sense? Go to something you do know. I don't know pints to gallons. Well, what's in between a pint and a gallon? A quart. To go to quarts and then to gallons. I don't know miles to inches, but what is between those? Well, feet. We could have also done yards. Class, how many yards in a mile? 1,760. So we could have multiplied the 2 times 1,760, gotten the number of yards, and then I know how many inches are in a yard, class? 36. So then we could have multiplied that answer by 36. It still would have come to the same answer, right? So it's not like there's one set way. You just have to find a unit that's in between that you can convert to. Look at page 217, top of the page. Cups to tablespoons. Have we memorized cups to tablespoons? No. Well, we have memorized, class, that a cup is how many fluid ounces? 8. So if they have 3 cups, and we know that 1 cup is 8 fluid ounces, we're going from larger cups to smaller fluid ounces, we can multiply by 8, class, to get how many fluid ounces? 24. And then how many tablespoons does it take to make a fluid ounce? 2 tablespoons. So we multiply by 2, and that's where we get 48 tablespoons. Does that make sense? Look at the next one. Do we know how many ounces are in a ton?
Oh.
No. But we do know how many ounces are in a pound. So they took the 128,000 ounces, trying to see how many T's there are, and they said, well, if I divide that by 16, right, because there's 16 ounces in a pound, that'll give me how many pounds? Let's see. 16 into 128. How many times would a 2 go into a 12 class?
8.
How many times would a 2 go into 12? 6. But this isn't a 2 yet, is it? So let's try 7 or 8. Michael said 8. Let's try 8. What's 16 times 8? Let's see. 8 times 6?
48.
Carry the 4. 8 times 1 plus 4? Ah, look at that. So it's going to come out to 8 with all 3 zeros. Apparently that's 8,000 pounds. How many pounds does it take to make a ton, though, class?
2,000.
So now we divide by 2,000. What do we do with all these zeros? So it's just 8 divided by 2 classes? 4 tons. Again, find middle ground. Find a unit that's in the middle that you can convert to and do it in 2 stages. Questions on what they did in example 6.1b. All right, your turn to try some of these. Page 219 at the top of the page. Page 219 at the top of the page. I want you to do 28 to 32. You might want extra paper for these, just because of the multi-step stage. Unless you write small, I'd suggest maybe having out some extra paper so you don't feel like you're cramped for space, you're not writing numbers on top of each other, you can't read anymore. Page 219, 28 to 32. I guess they're not coming for you, Corey. They drove past. Quietly at your seats. Again, I recommend using separate paper.
Bless you.
Excuse me. There's some chopping noise inside. Check your first two. If you're good, keep on working. If you're not good, questions on the first two. Check your first two. If you're good, just keep right on working. If you didn't get 28 and 29 correct, questions. Then sit up nice and tall. Michael, question?
What could the tons change into?
Tons goes to pounds, right? So multiply by 2,000, we get 4,000 pounds. Then multiply by the 16 to get the ounces. Right, so just like here, to go from gallons to pints, we start by gallons to quarts and then to pints. Yes, Ben?
On number 29,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it supposed to be like 8 pints to equal 1 gallon?
If you want to memorize that, you could. I wouldn't want to. I figured there's enough to memorize already without memorizing more, but it wouldn't be wrong to memorize 8 pints to the gallon. If you did, you could do it in one step, right? But so the more you memorize, the easier these are. It's just for most people, we don't want to memorize more than we have to. I mean, we got to memorize for history class and science class and so many things to memorize. So let's keep the memory down to a minimum is my thought. Yes, sir?
So if it's going, like, if it's converting to a lower, they're tiny.
Right, because you're going from large, huge, enormous tons, right, to smaller pounds, that's multiply. And then pounds are still bigger than ounces, so again, you multiply. Gallons are large, quarts are smaller, multiply. Quarts going down even smaller to pints, multiply again. If you were going to larger values, then you divide. So yes, exactly. So still thinking larger to smaller, multiply, smaller to larger, divide. Same rules as before. Yes, sir.
I have a question for 31. Are you supposed to know
Well, what do we know about teaspoons? What do we know about teaspoons?
2 teaspoons equal 1 ounce?
No, we don't know that. We know that 2 tablespoons equals a fluid ounce. What do we know about teaspoons? What do we know about teaspoons? If you don't know anything about it, you better memorize something. What do we know about teaspoons? Sit up nice and tall. There you go. Rear end all the way back, leaning slightly forward. There's only one thing we've memorized about teaspoons, or should be memorizing, equals. Ah, okay. So that means the only thing we can do is convert to tablespoons, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And then from there we can convert that to the fluid ounce. Pints and pecks, class. We haven't memorized that. By the way, we haven't memorized tons to ounces. We haven't memorized gallons to pints. We haven't memorized teaspoons to fluid ounces. We haven't memorized cups to gallons. We haven't memorized any of these. That's the point. The point is we ain't memorized these, and we don't want to memorize these. We got to think of another unit that they have in common. Pints can relate to quarts. Gallons can relate to quarts. Let's convert to quarts. Ounces can relate to pounds. Tons can relate to pounds. Let's convert to pounds. What can pecks relate to that pints can also relate to, class? Quarts. What do I know about pints to quarts? What about pints and quarts, class?
2 pints equals
2 pints in a quart, right? All right. So pints, if it takes 2 of them to make a quart, which one's the big one?
Quart.
The quart is bigger, right? So we're going from smaller pints to larger quarts, class. Divide. Fraction bar. That's what this is. Smaller, larger, divide. It's a fraction bar. Okay. So we're going to divide by 2, right? And that's going to give us how many quarts, class?
40.
40. All right. Now, what do I know about quarts and pecks?
8 quarts.
Oh, wait, 8 quarts.
8 quarts equals a peck, right? 8. Now, if it takes 8 quarts, that means the peck is the bigger one. So I'm going from smaller to larger. Again, we have to divide. So I'm going to divide by, what was that number again? 8 quarts to the peck. So how many pecks? 5 pecks is our answer. How many have that for number 20 or 30? Look at number 31. This one's really interesting. What do I know about what can teaspoons relate to and fluid ounces relate to, class? Tablespoons. 2 teaspoons. I need to convert that to tablespoons. Which one's bigger, class? The tablespoon's bigger. So I'm going from small teaspoons, stir the hot cocoa, to larger tablespoons. You serve the mashed potatoes, class. Smaller to larger, divide by what?
3.
3. It takes 3 teaspoons to make a tablespoon. Well, don't make this too hard now, class. What's 2 divided by 3?
Nothing. No, nothing.
2/3.
2/3.
2 divided by 3 is 2/3. See it right there in front of your face? 2/3? Now 3 over 2, that's 1.5, but not 2 divided by 3, it's 2/3. We get 2/3 of a tablespoon. Now what do I know about tablespoons related to fluid ounces, class? It takes 2 tablespoons to make a fluid ounce. So which one's the bigger one? The fluid ounce, because it takes 2 of these just to make 1 fluid ounce, doesn't it? So I'm again going from smaller tablespoons to larger fluid ounces, class. Again, I have to divide by what? 2. Wait a second. This is a complex fraction. Complex fraction. What does the fraction bar mean, class? Divide, but I don't divide, I multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to take the 2/3, class, and we're going to multiply it by what?
2.
1/2. The reciprocal of 2 is a half. What can the 2's do? And so what's my answer?
1/3.
1/3 of a fluid ounce. Did anyone get 1/3 of a fluid ounce? This was a tough one. Does it make sense now?
Yes.
All right. Let's take a look at the last one. This was a lot easier. Obviously, going from cups to gallons, you're going from really small to really big. But what's in between cups and gallons, class? Pints and quarts. I know, for instance, it takes 2...
Pints to make a quart.
Yeah, but let's start with cups. I know about cups what?
2 cups.
2 cups to make a pint, right? So let's divide by the smaller cups to get to pints. How many pints, class? 8 pints. All right, and then to go from pints to quarts, we have to divide by 2 again. How many cuties?
4.
4 cuties. All right, and then how many cuties does it take to make a gal?
1.
1, so we divide by 4, and we get
1.
1 gallon. How many thought it was 1 gallon? Took 3 steps to go from the cups to the gallons on that one. Questions on this multi-step conversion? Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, I was just...
All right, any questions on these? Let's do some word problems now. Number 33, read that for us if you would. Jalen.
Mr. Garcia bought a 64 fluid ounce jar of apple juice. How many cups of apple juice did he buy?
All right, so 64 fluid ounces, right? And it asked how many cups. Do we know anything about fluid ounces and cups, class?
8 fluid ounces and a cup.
Yeah. So is this going to take multi-step then?
No.
No. I know it takes 8 fluid ounces to make a cup. So am I going from larger to smaller or smaller to larger here, Jalen?
Smaller to larger.
Smaller to larger, we divide by how many fluid ounces in a cup, class?
8.
8 fluid ounces equals 1 cup. We divide by 8. We do this in our head class. We get how many cups?
8.
8 cups of apple juice. Surprising it calls it a jar of apple juice. Usually I call that a bottle. You know what I'm talking? You know where the apple juice is at the store? That's a bottle, or maybe even a carton in some case with a little side spout. Anyway, 8 cups of apple juice in that container. Number 34, read that for us if you would, Luciana.
Pastor Leanna bought 8
34. Let's go right next to 33.
Carol bought 120 bags of fertilizer. If each bag weighed 50 pounds, how many tons of fertilizer did he buy?
Oh, do you see what they did here? They gave us pounds, but they want what, class? Tons. So it's going to take a couple steps here. First of all, 120 bags of fertilizer, 50 pounds a bag. How many pounds? What are we going to have to do, class? Multiply. 120 bags. Every single one of them weighs 50 pounds. That's your seats. Figure out how many pounds of fertilizer, first of all, we have. I'm going to hang the zeros, and it's just 5 times 12, class. 60. Put the 2 zeros back on, we get 6,000 pounds of fertilizer. Now, it didn't want 6,000 pounds, class. It wanted the answer in tons. Back to Luciana, how many pounds to make a ton? 2,000. We do this in our head very easily. How many tons?
3.
Well, I was asking Luciana, but yes, it is 3 tons of fertilizer. Imagine how accomplished you'd feel, guys, at the end of the day, moving all those bags of fertilizer. You like get to the 120th bag, you're done. I'm like, yeah, I just lifted 3 tons. Not all at once, obviously, but yeah. All right, questions? Questions on that? All right, number 35. Read that one for us, Bryson.
Pastor Lehman bought 8 bushels of strawberries for Friendship Day. Friendship Day. If he hands out 1 pint of strawberries each person that attends, how many people can he give strawberries?
All right, so he's got 8 bushels of strawberries, and everybody's getting how much, class?
1 pint.
1 pint. Do we know bushels to pints, class?
No.
No. But I do know that I can convert these 8 bushels into, class, pecks. So let's go bushels to pecks. Which is bigger, the bushel or the peck?
Bushel.
Bushel. From bushels to pecks, class, we're going to multiply by what?
4.
4 pecks in a bushel. So how many pecks do we have here,
4.
Bryson?
32.
32. But then we don't want pecks. What do we know about pecks, class? A peck is
8 quarts.
8 quarts. So we can convert pecks to quarts if we multiply now, class, by 8. And Bryson, what do we get here?
16 and then 25.
So we get 256 quarts. But not everybody gets a quart of strawberries. He's giving away in pint-sized containers. What do we know about pints and quarts, class? 2 pints makes a quart. And so that means we now need to multiply that by 2, Bryson. And we get
12, 11, 5.
512 pints. And everybody gets a pint. So class, how many people can get pints of strawberries? 512. That's a good sized congregation. 512 people. Strawberries. Friendship Day. Happiness. All right, questions. I love strawberries. Number 36. Read that for us if you would, Corey.
At the athletics competition last year, each person drank an average of 32 ounces of water. If 300 people attended this year, how many quarts of water should be available?
All right. Every single person drinks how much, Corey?
32 ounces.
32 ounces. And there's how many people?
300.
What should we do?
Multiply.
Multiply. The 300 times 32. I would hang the zeros. Corey, what's 3 times 32?
64. I mean, wait. 96.
96. We hung 2 zeros. So that's how many fluid ounces of water they need to have available, right? But they didn't want how many fluid ounces. They wanted how many quarts, right? How many quarts? Well, we don't know how many fluid ounces are in a quart, but I do know how many fluid ounces are in a
Cup.
Okay, we'll piggyback on what you. How many fluid ounces in a cup then, Kirsten?
8.
8. So if we divide this by 8, that'll give us how many cups they need to have available. We can do this in our head here, Corey, because we know 96 divided by 8 equals
12.
12, right? Because 12 times 8 is 96. 96 divided by 8 is 12. And we'll put the 2 zeros back on. That's cups. We don't want cups. We want quarts. Well, what do we know about cups? And we don't know cups and quarts. We know how many cups are in a class? Pint. How many cups in a pint? 2. So divide that by 2, Corey. And 1,200 cups divided by 2 gives us 100 pints. But we don't want pints. We want quarts. So we need to divide that by what, Corey?
2.
2 again. And how many quarts?
300.
We need 300 quarts available. Now, there is perhaps an easier way. We were dealing with big numbers the whole time. What might have been an easier approach to this problem? Michael, idea? How much did it say every person drank?
32 ounces.
It said every person drank 32 ounces. Let's convert that to quarts first. For instance, we know in a pint there are how many fluid ounces, class? 16. If we divide 32 by 16, that gives us what?
2.
2 pints, right? How many pints does it take to make a quart?
2.
So if I've got 2. So if I have 2 pints, how many quarts is that, class?
4.
Oh, 1.
1. In other words, if every person drank 32 ounces, class, every person drank a quart. 300 people came. How many quarts do you need? 300 quarts. Wouldn't that have been a lot easier?
Easy.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to approach it. There's the smart way and then there's the more methodical way. This is the more natural way, perhaps. This is the smart way. I like smart way because I am
Lazy.
Number 37, read that for us if you would, Kirsten.
Winding through 14 states, the Appalachian Trail has an approximate length of 2,190 miles. What is the approximate length of the trail in feet?
Wow. All right, by the way, that is Appalachian. I was of the Appalachian variety. I just assumed it was Appalachian. That's what I'd heard my whole life. And somebody said Appalachian, and I was like, no, that's not right. And I looked it up. It's Appalachian. It doesn't sound right to me. It's Appalachian sounds so much better to me, but it's not. It is Appalachian. So anyway, the Appalachian Trail, 2,190 miles, but they want to know how long the trail is, it said, in feet. Do we have a conversion class to go from miles to feet?
No.
Yes.
Yes, we do. At your seats, do number 37. Gonna get a big old number here, because that's a whole lot of miles, which means there's gonna be a whole lot of feet. Working silently. It will be in the millions, several millions of feet. Elaine's got it. What did you get, Elaine?
11,563,200.
Good. I would hang the 2 zeros. You get the 115,632, and then stick your 2 zeros back on, and you do get that many feet. And that's a great big number. Number 38. Read that for us, if you would, Sam.
The shortest player on Jefferson High School basketball team is 72 inches tall. What is the height in feet?
Do I know how to convert inches to feet, class?
Yes.
Yes. So at your seats, do it. And it should take about 3 seconds. If we remember how many inches in a foot, class? 12. And we're going from small to large, so we divide by 12, class. How many feet? 6. So the shortest guy on the team is 6 feet tall.
Wait,
All right, number 39. It's a high school team. Y'all are junior high still, okay? A high school team, all right? Number 39. Read that for us, you in the back. Griffin. Whatever your name is. You in the hoodie.
Buffalo Mountain in Southwest Virginia has a peak of 1,320 yards. Find the height of the peak in feet.
All right, do we know how to go from yards to feet, class?
Yes.
Sure. All we got to do is multiply by
3.
and what do we get for our answer, Griffin?
3,960
feet. Yep, 3,960 feet. Number 40, read that for us, Elaine.
A large truck had a 3-ton load of oranges. How many 5-pound bags would the oranges make?
Ooh, 3 tons, class. How many pounds would that be? 6,000, right? Just 2,000 for every ton, so it's 6,000 pounds, but they want to know how many bags. How much is in each bag, class? 5 pounds in every single bag. So what do I need to do? Divide by the 5 pounds per bag from the total of 6,000 pounds. We know 5 goes into 60, class. 12, because 12 times 5 is 60. Put the 2 zeros back on, class. We get
1,200.
1,200 bags of oranges. Homework for this evening. Homework for this evening is to do it. Page 218. Page 218, 19 to 27. Page 218, I want you to do 19 to 27. And on page 220, page 220, do 15 to 25. Page 220, do 15 to 25. Take a look at those 2 assignments in our next lesson. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and you are dismissed.
The first page